box office bombs. Money goes in and... oh.
We f***ed up. I mean, how can you not admire these business decision train wrecks?
Because throughout the age of Hollywood, there are actually over 90 real-life examples of producers greenlighting multi-million-dollar productions that each ended up costing their respective studios over $100 million each. I'm so fired! But if the Transformers franchise has taught me anything, is that a movie's quality and a movie's box office return are in no way related.
Seriously, am I the only person on the planet that has not seen these films in the cinema? Everyone is stupid except me. So it got me thinking, do the films that lose a crap ton of cash deserve to? In some cases, yes.
But are there some underappreciated classics that we just didn't give a chance to? Well, let's take a look at the 5 biggest box office disasters of all time, i.e. the 5 films that spent big but came up short, to see if they're as bad as their horrific return on investment would suggest. And we're diving into the deep end here, because the first film I'm going to talk about lost so much money, it straight up put its production company out of business.
And going $171 million in the red will, do that.
Yeah, this was a film I was always curious about but never got around to watching, until this video gave me an excuse to. Cutthroat Island was directed by the same guy that brought you Die Hard 2 and Cliffhanger.
And it's a pirate movie. A perfectly serviceable pirate movie.
Yeah, it's kind of devoid of anything unique or notable. It's just your traditional pirate swashbuckler, the kind you'd see from the 50s or 60s. But it unfortunately came out in the 90s, and unlike Hook, it didn't really have a big name director, star or IP to back it up. So it's kind of no wonder it failed. I mean, it's kind of interesting to see a female lead in a movie like this, but Geena Davis? Since when was she an action star? It's kind of an odd casting choice, don't you think?
I mean, seriously, how did Geena Davis end up as the lead in an action movie? Oh, she was banging the director, it's all clear now.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Davis is perfectly fine in the role. And maybe I'm wrong not to think of her as an action star, as she appears to be doing a lot of her own stunts in this.
And these action sequences, look, I'll be honest with you, they kind of blew me away at times.
Dude! Look, this was 1995, they're doing this for real.
That is awesome!
I mean, granted, some stunts can look a little... crap, but all in all, it's pretty damn good.
It does get kind of clunky at times, but I don't know, that clunkiness adds to the charm for me. It sort of reminds you that they did this for real, and you've got to appreciate that, because a lot of filmmakers don't make this kind of effort.
And it's extra impressive this, because this film had a notoriously horrible production. Listen to this.
For starters, Michael Douglas was initially supposed to be in the movie, but when he found out that Geena Davis had a bigger role than him, he dropped out.
Bit petty.
So director Rennie Harlin recast him for knockoff Carrie Elways here. By the way, that's actually a young Matthew Modine. You might remember him from Stranger Things.
Oh, hey, it's that guy!
But Harlin was apparently so preoccupied with this recasting process, he didn't even think to oversee the construction of the film's sets. And when he finally saw them, he was like,
ah, this is shit. Alright, we're starting it again, tear it all down. Look, it's not my fault you can't all read my mind.
Yeah, I doubt this guy was popular to work with. Oh, and this was just the start of the film's troubles. The chief camera operator got fired, and 24 crew members quit in protest. The film's cinematographer fell off a crane and broke his leg. Some pipes on set decided to break down, which caused raw sewage to pour into a water tank where the actors were supposed to swim.
I love it.
And to top that off, Oliver Reed had to be recast for a role after he got in a bar fight and flung his dick out in front of Gina Davis.
Working on this film must have been a nightmare.
And it only got worse when it was released in theatres, debuting at number 11 at the box office, outright putting Coralco Pictures out of business. And this is especially heartbreaking when you realise that the studio's next film was going to be another Paul Verhoeven-Arnold Schwarzenegger collaboration about a film set during the Crusades.
Oh, damn, that sounds cool.
Look, all things considered, it's a miracle Cutthroat Island came out as decent as it is. I mean, characters aren't too memorable, and the dialogue can be straight up awful, from poorly thought out innuendos.
See, I took your balls.
To some of the most over-the-top line delivery you'll ever hear in a motion picture.
I love this! I love this!
Is this a bad time to tell you that this guy would go on to become nominated for an Oscar?
Okay.
But it's worth watching Cutthroat Island if you ask me. If nothing else but to simply marvel at all the money they lost making it, and to see the inspiration it gave to Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, when you have a scene where a character gets trapped below deck with his love interest trying to save him, and the character is specifically called Will.
William?
Yeah, pretty clear that Gore Verbinski drew some inspiration here.
But Cutthroat Island didn't have a big-name director or producer on board, so understandable it didn't do well. But how did a film that was written and produced by the guy behind The Lord of the Rings fail so dramatically? Yeah, bet you all forgot about this one, huh? Only came out in 2018.
She's beautiful and strange. And very, very rare.
Yep, Peter Jackson was involved in the screenplay and production of Mortal Engines, though it was directed by another guy.
But you know, you gotta splatter Jackson's name over the marketing to get those butts in seats.
Well, that plan backfired.
So how is Mortal Engines anyway? Was it the next Lord of the Rings that all of us just didn't give a chance to? No.
I mean, the premise of the book this is based on sounds like it was written by a man high on oven cleaner.
Alright, post-apocalyptic world, right? So everybody decides to put their shitties on wheels. This is a comedy, right?
I mean, granted, this bizarre premise does make the world kinda cool to look at. The style reminds me of some of the more technologically advanced Final Fantasy settings, what with the airships and the mechanization and everything, and seeing how they've adapted London's landmarks to fit a moving vehicle is kinda clever, so props to Weta Digital for their work here. Unfortunately, it's clear they didn't put nearly as much effort into developing the characters and story as it did its world. I mean, Hugo Weaving is cool as always, but he is wasted on this. He plays a completely one-dimensional villain with motivations that make no sense, and they really try to make you sympathetic for characters you don't give two shits about. From no-name characters biting the dust to this green-eyed robotic thing who looks like a character from a completely different movie.
You made me a promise, Hester.
Oh, sorry, they're shooting the Fallout movie next door.
Anyway, he's this ruthless, insane robot out to kill our heroes, but about halfway through the movie, he dies, and the film expects us to feel sorry for him. Yeah, I mean, it's unveiled that Hester here was raised by him.
But look at him!
Look at all the people he kills in this movie. Look how shit your pants scary he is. And yet, here's his death scene with sad, tragic music and a crying lead character.
I am so confused right now.
Oh, and the ending is atrocious. I mean, it's downright comical.
Because Hester and Hugo Weaving have this interaction.
You are so like me. Your mother never told you, did she?
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
Wait, they're not.
But then I guess you didn't need to because you already knew.
They are seriously doing a surprise father twist. Are you shitting me? You can't do that anymore, guys. Didn't you get the memo?
This trope has been parodied so many times that no one can take it seriously anymore. I mean, if you're gonna rip off Star Wars, why not go all the way?
I don't know, have one of your characters fly inside a giant structure and blow it up from within or something.
Great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million.
I am beyond words right now.
Oh, and whilst we're talking about this turd of a climax, check out what has to be some of the worst written dialogue I have ever heard in my life.
You want to die?
No. I'm gonna live.
This film is awful. I've decided, no, this makes the Hobbit trilogy look like masterpieces.
I just don't know how this idea got greenlit, and understandably, it lost Universal Studios an estimated $175 million. What a waste of money.
Ah, 6 years planning down a drain.
Okay, let's see if our next film is any better. Oh, yeah, my family had this on DVD back in the day. I seem to remember this one being pretty good.
Okay, let's sit down, grab some popcorn, put our feet up, and give this sucker a rewatch.
It's nowhere near as good as I remember.
Yeah, The 13th Warrior came out in 1999, based on a book by Michael Crichton and directed by John McTiernan.
So the guy that wrote this, with the guy that directed that, with this guy as your lead, that's gotta be a recipe for success, right?
Yeah, to start, the story of 13th Warrior is pretty basic. A bunch of warriors are sent to protect a village from an invading force of ravagers. That's it. It's your basic Seven Samurai Magnificent Seven style plot. But unlike those films, the characters in 13th Warrior are...
Well, put it this way. When this film ended, I wouldn't have been able to tell you a single one of these guys' names.
Hell, I couldn't even remember what Banderas' character was called.
I am Ahmed Ibn Fahlan, Ibn al-Abbas, Ibn Rashid.
Okay, that might have been why.
Oh, and the film is pissed. Horribly. It's only about an hour 40, but it feels longer. And there's no structure to the plot either. It's just setup, action scene, invading force runs away. Setup, action scene, invading force runs away.
And so on and so forth.
And whenever the film requires something happen in the plot, they just go see some crazy woman, she pulls some sort of unexplained prophecy out of her ass, and voila, the non-existent plot is back on track.
Brilliant but lazy.
And no time is dedicated to developing the characters, and what little there is of that is so underwhelming. So many of these guys die in the film, and you feel nothing when they bite the dust. Oh, and then there's this chick, who I guess is the love interest, but Banderas and her share like a couple scenes together, and then after a fight, they hold hands, it cuts to them in bed, and that's it. That's your romance subplot.
How romantic.
And so the film has to rely on its action set pieces to entertain.
And, you know, they'd be alright if you could actually see them.
Yeah, so many of the fights are set at night, and they've used the darkness, along with shaky cam and quick cuts, to hide any imperfections in the choreography, and it just makes for a dreadful viewing experience. I couldn't see what the hell was going on. The film isn't awful, but it's so lacking in personality or originality that it's instantly forgettable. And the producers also made the mistake of releasing the film the same weekend as The Sixth Sense.
I see stupid people.
And with a gargantuan production and advertising budget alongside a measly box office return, it's estimated that, adjusted for inflation, this ended up costing Touchstone Pictures up to $210 million, which I believe makes it the most costly movie mistake of the 20th century. I've heard this film has its fans, but I'm not seeing anything special here.
So let's move on to...
Hey-ho, Silver, away!
Yeah, I mentioned Pirates of the Caribbean previously in this video, but don't let that fool you into thinking Johnny Depp and Gore Verbinski weren't immune to box office busts themselves, because they made the rather poor decision to adapt a property that hadn't been relevant since, the days of Methuselah. And that decision ended up costing Disney up to $221 million in today's money.
So was The Lone Ranger even that bad? Well, no. But it's nothing startling either.
It's a film that I don't think it knows what it wants to be, because on one hand, the finale of the film is a fun, over-the-top train sequence set to William Tell, which is a lot of fun to watch. But on the other hand, this is a Disney movie where the villain proceeds to gut out a man's chest and proceeds to eat his heart.
Yes, I'd like to receive my money back on the proviso that it scarred my children for life.
Don't ever do that again.
Yeah, and it's a shame, because I think this film had potential to be really good. Armie Hammer and Johnny Depp make pretty good leads, but what could have turned this film from average to amazing is if the two had a stronger dynamic, a stronger camaraderie. And yes, you get this towards the very end of the film, but there's just way too much bickering and backstabbing between them if you ask me. You want to see these guys work together, two men of wildly different backgrounds, putting their differences aside to defeat the villain.
I love when films and shows do this, like with Guy Pearce and Russell Crowe in LA Confidential.
The night Al made you. You want to tear all that down?
With a wrecking ball. You want to help me swing it?
Fuck yeah!
But here, they're at each other's throats way too much, and I think this is a problem Verbinski has with the Pirates movies too. All the characters are constantly backstabbing each other all the time.
Pirate.
Yeah, okay, but pirates in that sense are bad guys. Bad guys you don't want to see win.
A big part of what separates heroes from villains is that heroes have each other's back. That's a big part of what makes them so rootable. It's why you want them to win. By all means, give the good guys some inner turmoil, but keep that to a minimum. Cause here, there's a scene where the Lone Ranger leaves Tonto to die. And the only reason he comes back to save him isn't because it was the right thing to do. No, it was only because Tonto knew the way to their next destination and he'd be lost without him. The actual hell? This guy's supposed to be our hero?
You're despicable.
But the film does have another issue. It's 2.5 hours long.
And this is just a silly little adventure movie. It doesn't need to be that.
Like, you know what could have been cut to shave off several minutes? The flash forward bits.
Yeah, there's these scenes where an older Tonto is just chilling out as a museum exhibit as he retells the events of the film to this random kid. And this adds nothing to the movie. If you ask me, the film might have worked better as a Blazing Saddles style spoof, because the film is at its best when it's just having fun. Like, this bit is hilarious.
That was funny.
Yeah, the movie can be great, but it is sadly let down by an average script and that bloated runtime.
And last but not least, we come to the biggest box office dud of all time.
Adjusted for inflation, this film ended up costing Disney up to an estimated $236 million, which is more than the GDP of some small countries.
All blown on... Well, first of all, you could have picked a more interesting title.
John Carter? Snore?
Boring.
This was based on a book, right?
Well, what was the book called? A Princess of Mars? Well, that sounds way better. Why'd you change it?
Well, get this. They apparently didn't want to have princess in the title, because then boys wouldn't go see the movie. And they didn't want to have Mars in the title, as then girls wouldn't see the movie. So to combat this, they settled for the dullest sounding name ever.
Great work, guys.
Okay, to be fair, adapting the Edgar Rice Burroughs novel into a film is kinda doomed to fail from the start, because despite being based on a book from 1917, many of the sci-fi flicks drew inspiration from the book long before John Carter itself could get a chance to. So now, an adaptation of The Princess of Mars just comes across as incredibly derivative these days, with the only really interesting idea being the whole lower gravity giving Carter super strength thing.
Despite John Carter not offering anything unique or interesting though, it's not bad. It just doesn't do anything that well.
The cast are fine, but the story doesn't give them much to work with, and like The Lone Ranger, it's lacking that bond building between characters. I think more time should have been dedicated to Carter building a rapport with the Tharks, because they eventually decide to go to war with him at the end, but he doesn't do much in the way to earn their trust. They're all like, "Why should we trust you?"
I could jump really high. It's a bit rushed.
Oh, and then there's the romance between Carter and the princess, and this should be the make or break element of this film. Because at the end of the day, A Princess of Mars isn't so much a piece of science fiction, it's more a love story. If you ask me, the dynamic between these two should be the film's selling point, the main draw, as there's a really strong potential for a great love triangle dynamic here between Carter, the princess, and McNulty over here. But unfortunately, the guys that ended up writing this movie had more experience writing kids' films than they did romance, and as such, these two end up with no chemistry. Therefore, the film just doesn't work. I mean, the actors do fine, but the dialogue has no wit or charm to it, so they can only do so much. If the romance worked here, the film would be saved, as it would make the ending especially poignant, because in the finale, Carter marries the princess, but then he ends up getting sent back to Earth, and he can't get back. If the romance worked here, this ending would be heartbreaking, but because you don't give a shit about these two, it leaves no impact. I mean, the visual effects are good, but like Mortal Engines, it's so reliant on these visuals, you just kind of become numb to it after a while, and the inner video editor in me just started to hallucinate all the green screen present here.
I gotta get out more.
I mean, with this film being directed by Andrew Stanton, you know, the guy who directed Finding Nemo and WALL-E, I don't know why this film just wasn't animated. For me, if your film is this reliant on computer effects, you might as well just make the whole thing in a computer, cause the technology to seamlessly blend live action actors to a VFX background just didn't exist back in 2012. All in all, John Carter is fine.
But that's been the recurring theme to this video, hasn't it?
None of these 5 films are terrible. They're all perfectly watchable, but they were also set on splashing out a crapload of cash on visual effects and action set pieces that they all forgot to write good stories with punchy dialogue and memorable characters to match, so it's no wonder they all failed.
To summarize, the secret to box office success is to make your movie good.
That, or pay through the roof for the rights to a marketable IP and a bankable lead actor, and then you can make the movie as shit as you want.
Hooray!
Anyway, thanks for watching guys. Like if you like, subscribe if you're new, and a special thank you to my supporters on Patreon. If you want to support me as well, I offer lots of cool perks. Link is in the description if you're interested. Take care guys. Adios.